Welcome to another analysis session with me, Grandmaster Simon Williams. In this session, I'm going to show you a game that I recently played against another Grandmaster from the longest running tournament in the world, the Hastings Congress. And I was playing a very good friend of mine in this game, none other than One Punch Danny Gormally. What was I going to say? Danny Gormally? One Punch Gormally. Very good friend of mine, very strong player, very good tactician and a brilliant writer. Danny, he's done some great books. I recommend you check out his books, and actually he's looking for tuition at the moment, so if you need a good coach, go to Gormally. There you go, I gave him a plug, so hopefully that'll keep him happy now after doing this video about beating him. Well, we'll see about that. But a very good friend of mine, always tricky playing friends. And what I'm going to demonstrate in this game is the whole idea I was trying to play was to stop Danny from getting any active chances against me, because Danny's strength is when he's calculating, attacking, playing with the initiative. Now, when you have the white pieces, and I did in this game, it's a lot easier to stop your opponent from getting happy, getting active, having all the fun at the board. So I didn't want to allow any gambits. I didn't want to allow him to start sacrificing, get the active play, because he's so extremely good in these types of positions. So that was my aim in this game. And I'm going to show you my thought process as I go through the game, what I was thinking, and how this led me to eventual victory, albeit a rather fortunate victory in the end. So here's a picture of Danny Gormally, quite a funny picture there when he was doing a DVD for GingerGM. Danny did a DVD on improving your practical play. Quite like that picture, actually. I don't know if it's his best picture, but you know, there we go. And Danny did this great DVD for GingerGM, which you can download from our shop, and it's good tips for the practical player on how to get better. Go to gingergm.com to check that out. Anyway, in this game, I started with d4. And like I said, I just wanted to stop Danny's play. So, knight to f6. And already, I saw that Danny, against c4, had played the Benko with c5, d5, b5. And this is an opening which I think is fine for white, but it does allow black to gain active play, and this is against my principles. So the first thing you've got to do is pick the right opening to stop your opponent getting a happy position. So in this position, I actually went knight to f3, and this is a good way to try to stop the normal Benko, because I don't believe c5 is a particularly good move now, because you can go d5, and the move b5 now doesn't have the same punch because there's nothing on c4 to attack, and you've even got moves like a4 here undermining the queen side. So this kind of stops, I believe, the Benko, knight to f3. Now my opponent played g6, and here I played c4. And I had something planned against the King's Indian defence, which is what I expected. But Danny played c5. Again, I think going for a Benko. So again, we got to think, okay, the whole idea of this game, stopping my opponent's play. And in this position, if I go d5, I allow this active Benko move with b5. And I didn't want to allow Danny this opportunity because he's very good in these positions. So I had to think here. And I decided to play knight to c3. Now this is crafty because he can no longer play b5. And if he takes on d4, I recapture with my knight, and we have what's called a Maroczy bind position. For example, when I fianchetto my bishop, I have great control of the centre. It's quite a positional game, but black again can't get very active in this position. So this is my whole philosophy here. So after knight c3, bishop g7 played, and now I can play d5, because if b5, I can play knight takes b5. Worth pointing out, the whole point of the Benko, if you haven't seen it before, is that after pawn takes b5, black goes a6, and if you take on a6, at some point black plays bishop takes a6, and he gets play later on down the a and b files, and he gets a very active position for his pawn. I mean, it might just not be a very good opening, but still, you have to think of your opponent's strengths and weaknesses. Chess is a battle, and if you can stop your opponent doing what he wants to do. So this is really, this game, a lot about the psychology of a chess battle as well as the actual moves. And this is something that you can really use in your own games. Stop your opponent being happy. So after this, play now continued with castles, pawn to e4. So we have a more King's Indian type of position. d6. And now, again, it's time to even think here, because previously I'm always worried about this b5 move. I mean, if my opponent plays b5 here, I can push on with e4, which should be good for me. But now that my opponent's played d6, and this is the move he's played, he may even be threatening to go b5 now. For example, if I play a move without thinking, bishop e2, b5 again, and I want to stop this move, because knight takes b5, now my opponent can capture this central pawn, which should be good for him. And if I go pawn takes b5, he has a6, and this is slightly different to the game. I want to go a4 in these positions, but after pawn takes pawn, I can't go a takes pawn because of the rook on a1. Now, a very good strategy to play against this b5 move is I play bishop f4 here, which is quite a crafty idea. And this is aimed again against b5, because now I can go pawn takes b5, and if a6, trying to get a normal Benko structure, I now play a4. And this is a very good strategy to play if you can ever play it against this pawn sack. The point being, if black now takes on b5, I can capture with my pawn on b5 because my queen is defending the rook, hence why I move my bishop out. And this pawn on b5, which is an extra pawn, stops a lot of black's active counterplay, stops a piece coming to a6. It's a very good pawn. So this is a clearly better position for me. So this is why I went bishop f4, and also it makes my opponent think twice about e6, which I think he should still play, by the way, offering a pawn. But this is more of a psychological move than anything else. Okay, the game continued. Rook e8, bishop e2, finishing my development. Queen b6, quite a crafty move. I had a very long think here because I wanted to simply castle, but my opponent might be able to take on b2 here. Whether Danny would have played this, I don't think he wanted a draw against me. I think he wanted to defeat me. But after this, you know, the position... Whoa, what happened to the knight there? The knight has gone walkies. Oh, dear. It seems like the program has frozen. That's not a good sign, is it? Okay, let's see if I can get it back. Oh, dear. That's not good at all, is it? So, where has the knight gone? That wasn't such a bad piece. It jumped off the board there. Okay, I think we're going to have to... oh dear, that's most annoying that knight has disappeared. What am I supposed to do now? Can I go... I'm just going to create another board very quickly, and we'll go through the moves very quickly. Sorry about that. I know this is a new program that chess.com are using, so I'm sure there's a couple of very small bugs, nothing too serious, but you know. Okay, so we get back to the position very quickly. Sorry about the short delay. Give you a chance to have a look at the opening again, and I won't go through what I've already discussed at the moment. I'm playing this off the top of my head. I'm sometimes looking at the moves next to me just to remember. Okay, so we're back here again. So castles here would allow black to get a draw when queen takes b2. And then after here, I probably have to take a draw with this perpetual. And, well, I mean, a draw against Danny is not such a bad result, but we both were in a mood for a fight here. So I played queen d2, and my opponent now played e6. I was never, ever considering taking on e6 and grabbing this pawn on d6. Again, this is against my philosophy, the philosophy of allowing Danny active play. And here Danny would have been in his element with simply knight c6 and a rook coming to d8. And even though I grabbed the pawn, you do not want to enter a position like this against a player of Danny's tactical ability. So I simply, after e6, castled. And this is why I spent a long time on queen d2, because now I was looking at pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn. And again, it's about restriction this whole game. And I'm going through my thought process. And the reason I spent a lot of time is I thought the critical move was bishop f5 here. And against this move, I had prepared knight h4. Restriction is the key. I wanted to force his bishop back to d7, because then his knight on b8 doesn't have a natural route into the game. And I personally don't think that the knight going to c7 fits this position. What is the knight doing on c7? It's not really doing anything. It wants to be on the e5 square. And after knight h4, I had to calculate the possibility in knight e4. Knight takes knight, bishop takes. But here I saw a very good move. By the way, not f3 here, because queen b2 looks quite good for my opponent. But instead, just simply bringing a piece on the open e line. And now I'm threatening f3 and bishop d3. And tactically, this works for me. And again, I just wanted to stop my opponent's active play. So my opponent, Danny, probably saw this. And instead, he played bishop g4, trying to exchange this bishop for the knight, which is a typical idea in this line. I encourage this, h3, and this also gives my bishop on f4 the h2 square. My opponent took on f3, and now developed with knight bd7. I have to say, I was quite happy after rook on fe1, because rather than thinking about my own ideas, I was using another point of view in this game. I was thinking about how my opponent was going to try to get active. Now, have a think about this here. How does black get active? Yes, black has developed his pieces, but what is he actually doing? Because he can't go knight h5. This is a normal move, because I take on h5, doubling his pawns. This looks ugly. If he goes knight e5, which he does in the game, at some point, I can always take on e5, which should give me a slight edge. My long-term plan is to go a3, rook b1, and b4, and this should ensure me some edge. So it's quite nice here, because my bishops actually stop his knights coming into the game. So I think I have a nice edge here, and I was very happy the way the things have gone. Danny played a6. And now I play queen c2. I'm a bit concerned about queen b4. Again, looking at all my opponent's active play and trying to stop them. Now, queen b4 is not as strong now because of something like bishop e2. And my opponent wanted to play knight e4 in these positions. But now my queen is on c2. I stop this possibility. So again, extinguishing all my opponent's active play. So my opponent, Danny, I keep saying my opponent, but Gormally is a better way to play, better name. Mr. Danny Gormally played knight to e5, and here I could play bishop e2 and just sit on this position, but I quite liked the idea of keeping things simple by taking on e5. Rook takes e5, rook takes e5, pawn takes e5. Now, another little tip for you guys. Whenever you have a change of pawn structure, as we do here, you have to reassess the position, reassess your plans, reassess your opponent's plans. Again, what am I doing in this game? I'm trying to think what my opponent's doing. This is one thing that I'm amazed at how many lower rated players fail to do this in their own games. This is why I'm really trying to get it across to you. A lot of lower rated players only think about their own ideas. So key to stop your opponent's ideas. They're half the game. And I'm trying to go through the thought process in this game, how I'm going to do this. So have a think now. What is black trying to do in this position? How do we try to stop it? Well, I thought black is trying to do something like knight e8, knight d6, and then f5, e4. This is his positional idea. I have this connected pass pawn, but if you can blockade it with a knight, perfect. So this is black's key idea here. So I've got to try to stop this. I came up with a clever idea, queen b3. And again, this is also playing a bit against Danny's play. He's, again, a very active player. An exchange of queens, I feel less worried. I think Danny should exchange queens here anyway. And now, if he goes knight e8, I have a couple of ideas. Knight e4 is possible. But actually, a very interesting possibility here is knight a4. And now, if something like rook c8, I can even go b4, sacrificing a pawn, and going c5 here. This is positionally aimed against stopping knight d6. And the other point is I'm going to play d6 next. My bishop comes to life. This is a very interesting possibility. So I think I hold some edge if the queens get exchanged. But I think Danny should have gone for this. Well, actually, the way he played it was okay, as long as he actually followed up correctly. He played queen c7. Again, I got to stop his knight coming to d6 and f5, e4. You've got to have a sense of danger when you play chess. For example, if I'm not paying attention and I go rook d1, after something like knight d6, I can even knight e8, which is coming to d6. I can even get into a worse position. This is lazy play. I mean, let's say I do something like a5, knight d6. He's going to go f5, e4. I fall into a worse position. I cannot allow this. So I play d6 first. Key move. Queen takes d6, rook d1, queen c7 is what I thought he'd play. Instead, Danny played queen f8. It was funny actually, because after the game, straight away in analysis, Danny pointed out what he should have played, and he has a very good understanding of chess. And he pointed out that after queen c7, I misassessed my position. I thought in this fairly forcing line here with rook takes b2, a4, and now something like rook c2. I thought that it must be better after something like check here, knight d5. I thought white has this a pawn. This a pawn is very dangerous. But in the analysis, Danny immediately pointed out that the move knight e4 keeps him in the game. Computer goes with Danny here, assesses this as equal because black is actually getting quite active. And this counteracts the strength of my a pawn. So very good understanding by Danny. But I think he was keen to keep winning chances, keep queens on the board. So after this move, he played the very passive queen f8 move, and now I take control. So queen f8 played, and now I took on b7, and this is very logical. Rook b8, and here again, if I'm not careful, my opponent will take on b2, getting active. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to stop my opponent getting active. Have a little think here. How can you stop black playing rook takes b2 on the next move? So have a think here. Pause if you need to. Queen c7, of course. And this stops rook takes b2 because of rook d8. This keeps control of the position. All my pieces nicely placed. Rook e8. And now my opponent's piece is very badly placed. Now here I made a bit of a mistake. When you have an advantage, keep things as simple as you can. And what I played was okay. But the simplest way to do it, if you could exchange pieces and keep the advantage, then do so. I should have gone knight to e4 and played a position like this. And my rook coming to d7, bishop coming to d5. Very difficult for black to play. Very pleasant advantage. Not much counterplay from my opponent. The computer actually, unbelievable move the computer recommends. The computer gives bishop e4, which is kind of a move which saying black is helpless. This is a really very unhuman-like move, but very interesting move here. In the game, I played bishop c6, and I was eager to exchange queens, simplifying even more. But after rook c8, queen d6, again, I have an edge. My opponent played what I think is a brilliant move. Danny always finds the opportunity to get active play, and he does this with knight h5, trying to get active with his knight. Luckily, I still have very good control of the position. I play bishop b7. This pretty much forces the exchange of queens, and rook here. And now, if I wanted to, I played a mistake here. I should have put my bishop on d5. I was thinking about this, but again, I didn't want to allow his rook to get active. But sometimes you have to go to tactical means. At some point, you can't always control the game. Sometimes you have to enter into tactics and dive straight in. And here, this would have been very good for me. But now, a very sort of, I played rook b6 trying to stop this. Knight f4. And now I played rook b3. The move I missed when I went into this, I wanted to play a5. a4, a5, and then move my bishop or take the pawn, which I thought was going to be winning. But I missed here that bishop f6 is a very clever move from Danny. And the point is, if I go a5, threatening bishop takes a6, he has time to go bishop d8. And he just about kicks my rook away in time. So I have to change plans here. And I missed this, otherwise maybe I wouldn't have played rook b6. I played rook b3 in this position. And now, well, I think I've lost a lot of my advantage, but I still felt very confident at the board. I probably overassessed my position. Knight d3. And now knight to e4. Have to keep playing active. rook d8, bishop d5, and now we have a tactical sequence, again stopping his rook coming in. Knight to f4, I take on c5, here knight takes d5, and now, well, again, if I take on d5 and take on a6, this is, I assess, very okay for black, because my knight's out of play and his pawns are coming very quickly, active pieces for him. He shouldn't be in too much trouble here, because actually this combination of the f-pawn and e-pawn coming can be very dangerous to my king. He could even be better here, even though I'm a pawn up. So the point behind my play was this rook d3 move, and now bishop f8, good move, knight b3, okay, rook c8, pawn takes d5, I have won a pawn, e4. Here I played a mistake. I should go rook d1, keeping my back rank covered. Instead I went rook d4, being quite confident about the following sequence, and this is a point of chess blindness here, and it's a very amusing finish for me, not for Danny, who took it, I have to say, very well. After rook d4, f5, I calculate the follow sequence, d6. My opponent has to defend this pawn with his king. Knight to a5, and now king e6, knight b7. Playing this very quickly, king d7, and I banged out b4 very quickly, and here my opponent actually resigned to my quite shocked, well, not really shocked, because I assumed here, I was very confident, and my Danny was very unconfident here. We both assumed I'm going to go knight c5 check and just ram my d-pawn 2 squares up the board. And I have an extra pawn. We both assumed I'm winning. I think actually, I don't know if this is true, but our good friend Mark Hedman at this point was on the board next to us, and he just left the board and walked off, and I think Danny quite fancied a pint at this moment, and he resigned to go and join Mark in the bar. I'm not totally sure if that's true, but amazingly the computer actually demonstrates, even though Danny resigned here, this is still a draw. That it's still a draw, and in this position, if he plays rook c1 check, king here, and now bishop g7, it just shows you never give up. And the point being, if I go rook d5 to stop this, it looks like knight c5, d7, d8 is going to come. But in actual fact, after the simple bishop f6 move here, if I try to do this, he just comes king c6, and he's absolutely fine. Because if I move my rook back, he checks, and then he takes the pawn, and if anyone's better, black is. I was planning to go after this rook d2, but now in actual fact there's a check here, and actually in this position I assumed I was doing very well here, but it's funny that my opponent now has a clever move, bishop c3, and this bishop can come to b4, and this just about defends him in time, which is quite an amazing concept. For example, knight c5 check. Now, if he goes to the light squares, I check with the pawn, I check with the knight, my pawn queens. He has to go to d8. And now after knight e6 check, he has to go to d7. If he goes sideways, I queen with check. And after king d7, knight check, king here. Now, what can I do? Well, the point is, if I play d7 here, he can actually, well, let me get this right, actually. I've got to get this right. Oh, no, my rook's on pre, of course, so I can't go d7 because he takes my rook here in this position. But if I now play rook after check, play rook d5, which was some line I saw, he now just takes on b4. And the point is, if I go d7, trying to go knight e6 check, he has bishop takes f8. So in actual fact, it's equal at the end. My opponent resigned a little bit too early, maybe a bit disheartened by the way the game had gone. I'm sure another day Danny would have drawn that easily. But still, that does show you, if you keep the pressure up against your opponent, even if they defend well, they're going to be uncomfortable. And Danny was under some pressure there from the middle game onwards. And really, I wanted to show you that game because I just wanted to show you the way I was thinking about stopping my opponent's play. I realised Danny was a very good, active player. So it's really understanding your opponent in chess as well as yourself. And in that game, my whole idea was to try to stop him getting active, because he's beaten me so many times when he's got active, when he's outplayed me in active positions, when he's gained the initiative. I wanted to stop that today and keep him, well, as much under control as I possibly could. So, hope you enjoyed that game, and it's just my understanding of that. And I'll be back again. Well, I'm actually going to film some DVDs for Chessbase. Please like and subscribe to this video. Hopefully within a week, the D4 DVDs will be out. They will be out. So you can, I'm really hoping for digital download. Anyway, check out GingerGM.com for that. Cheers for now. I'll be back again with videos when I return from Hamburg after doing some filming. That was a bit more serious than my light-hearted blitz. Hopefully you learned something. Goodbye for now. I can finally cough. I can finally get that cough out that was in there for so long.